All right.
I know. I know.
All right, we are.
You ready?
Yes. ma'am.
Okay.
Right.
Again, so good evening to all of you. Thanks for rejoining us. I am going to welcome you once again to the Children's Services of Leon County's Executive Committee meeting. I am going to call this meeting to order, and it is now 5:17 p.m. So I don't see any in-person audiences here, but if anybody does come in and they would like to make a public comment, I will ask that they please see Ms. Clay and complete a comment card. Once again, to the council members, I do hope that we have a really good conversation, but just to keep us orderly, I'm just going to remind you all to please hold up your tent. So with that, Ms. Clay, will you please take roll for us?
Yes, Mr. Mitchell.
Here.
Mr. Watt.
Here.
Dr. Glenn.
Yeah, we have a quorum. All right, wonderful. All right, it is now time for us to approve the agenda. Now, there's one minor error before I get a motion. Under item number 5, letter B, the agenda that you all got said purchasing policy is now been updated to state purchasing card policy. So that's just a minor error, but I just wanted to let you all know that that was a change based on the agenda that you all originally saw. So if there are no other changes, I would like to entertain a motion.
I will move the approval of the agenda.
Okay.
Second.
We have an approval by Mr. Mitchell, a second by Mr. Watt, so the agenda is approved. All right, now it is now time for public comment. Do you have any comments or anything to read, Ms. Clay?
No public.
All right, no public comments at this time. Okay, so I would like for us to now discuss, these were 2 agenda items from last month. We're revisiting them again today. Mr. Rowe, if you would please review first our travel policy, and then after that, I'll come back to you on the purchasing card policies.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Chair. In the April meeting of the Executive Committee, I presented a draft travel policy. The CSC Leon has purchasing policy and also a P card policy, but didn't have a travel policy governing instances where staff or even board members might travel on behalf of CSC. I presented a draft of it from which I largely modeled after Alachua. I realized that I did not afford sufficient time for board members to review that. So we determined that we would take it up again at this meeting after folks had a chance to review and provide comments. That review has taken place. I did have comments. I revised the travel policy according to those comments. And the main changes over the draft that I submitted in April are that the lodging provision has been revised to include additional text regarding events and the lodging for events. In other words, a seminar or a conference that staff might attend for training purposes, educational purposes. The additional language now reads as follows. Travelers may stay in hotels recommended by the event they are attending or in competitively priced lodging for a particular geographic location. Here's the new text. In the event that the lodging rate offered by the hotel where the event is being hosted exceeds the rate authorized for state of Florida employees, then other accommodations consistent therewith shall be secured as long as such other accommodations are not, in the discretion of the chair, an excessive distance from the location of the event. In the event such other accommodations are not available, approval in advance by the chair is required before placing a reservation or incurring charges for lodging. Again, that was my attempt to address the comments I had received. So any of these, by the way, are open to additional revision based on your direction, or other provisions can be revised as well. There was a little bit of cleanup in there. There was some text that I think perhaps was unclear. Some of the comments indicated striking through or removing some of that text. Another instance of change since April is in the mileage section. There was some a redundant reference to the fact that reimbursement for mileage is not available if there's a rental car. Rent the car and then see reimbursement for mileage as well. Also, the first draft had reference to the federal government's rates for mileage reimbursement. A comment included, why don't we tie that to the state? So I added language that instead makes the reimbursement rate for mileage consistent with state law. That applies to state employees. In fact, I cited the section of the Florida statutes that governs that as well. Those were the primary changes, Madam Chair, the draft of the travel.
Thank you very much for the revisions. And I see where you did go back and add in some of the things that we discussed. Let me turn it over to the 2 of you. Do you all have any additional recommendations or changes, or are you both comfortable with the current travel policy that we have, the draft? Either one.
No, I'm okay.
Yeah, I appreciate the giving me an opportunity to offer up my suggestions. Madam Chair, it was you, I think, who mentioned, and I incorporated it, at least in my recommendations, the concept of, well, what if it's in this remote location? I mean, I think the good thing about the state of Florida is there's not very many remote locations, but in the event that there is, and it becomes problematic, I think the policy addresses that. So, all of my thoughts were incorporated and it's good.
Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so, I think we're all comfortable with this policy because I was very pleased with this. Let me just check in with regards to process. Do we need to take this back to the council for approval, correct? All right. So will you present this at our next meeting, just review it, and then you'll have you need a resolution for this?
I think because we've adopted our prior policies by resolution, I'll
Yes.
prepare a very short resolution,
Okay.
it's a C attached appendix to the
Okay.
policy itself.
Okay.
I'm gonna present it that way.
Wonderful. Okay, so I think we can move forward with our travel policy and the presentation of a resolution.
Just for the record.
Yes.
Public.
Oh, okay, absolutely. Mrs. Wright, are there any public comments on this?
There is no public
There are
comment.
no public comments. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so very much. All right, so we will ask Mr. Rowe to please complete a resolution. We'll bring that forward to the council at our next meeting. Wonderful. Okay, the next item that we asked you to revise with regards to authorization for utilization of the P card, the purchasing card. So will you please share with us some of those changes?
Absolutely, Madam Chair. Likewise, during the April meeting, the executive committee, there was some discussion regarding the existing P card policy. The P card policy is the policy by which staff members utilize a purchasing card or P card for the purchase of materials for use by CSC beyond its operations. The governing council had previously adopted its resolution 2022-04, setting forth that P card policy. There was some direction both from the April meeting and also in the comments I received leading up to today's meeting as to additional revisions for the P card policy. Those resolutions are set forth in your agenda package through a resolution which would amend the earlier policy to make the changes that I saw in the comments. One of which there was formally a requirement in the P card policy that the executive director will provide weekly or monthly statements to the governing council concerning purchases that were made with the P card. That was basically that information should be available at any time to any board member. I think that was the idea behind deleting that comment. Also, there was discussion that the director of finance and operation, perhaps most needs to have a P card, didn't have one. At least not by the prior policy, but in actuality, she has one that's been assigned. So there was direction from the executive. Let's get that ratified and confirmed, just to make sure we recognize she is that. So the resolution does that, recognizes that Dina, as the director of finance and operation, will also have a P card. Sets forth the limits for the expenditure, similar to what the administrative services director had. In fact, the spending limits are exactly the same. Also, there was a list of prohibited uses of the P cards in the original policy. There was a question by Madam Chair, I think, about the list of items, including anything that's prohibited by our purchasing policy, which there really isn't any. But in the event that there might be, I clarify the language, say if there is something in our formal purchasing policy that says you can't do this with a P card, it requires a formal procurement, you can't use a P card. Also, I defined the term capital items. One of the items under the prohibited use of cards was capital items. So I've included a definition that basically says a capital item is an item that is in excess of X dollars, and I left that blank. It's the determination, of course, but also one that has a useful life of more than 1 year and which is typically depreciated for accounting purposes over a period of more than 1 year. I developed that both through my own research on generally accepted accounting principles for local governments, but also in talking to John Grayson, who serves as our accountant. And he said that for purposes of the annual audit, the capitalization number is $5,000. That's what the auditors are using. That is not by any means binding on the executive committee or on the governing council. You can come up with any number you want in order to define what capital is. Really, the idea is to set the limits on what the P card can be used for. And if you want to set a limit as far as, in addition to the daily and monthly spending limits, per single purchase, you could consider it a capital if it's set 5,000, could be 3, could be 7, whatever the exception.
Thank you for finding out that information because I wanted to find out what you thought that value should be. So thank you for that additional content. I don't see it here in this version. It was on the version that we had.
I think what has happened is in the packet here, there was an earlier draft.
Oh,
What I sent each board member Friday afternoon
Yes.
was the most current draft, and that has the
the
blank for
blank
the dollar.
slide, right, I remember that, okay. So let me just check in with the two of you. So first of all, overall, are y'all comfortable with the changes to the P card policy? And then second question is, with regards to the definition of a capital expense, are y'all comfortable with that cap being $5,000 as recommended by Mr. Grayson? Or would you all like to have a conversation with regards to a different dollar amount? Can I just clarify? Yeah.
I don't know that he recommended it. He just said that's what auditors use. I think
That's fair enough.
that's
Yeah.
different, so that.
Yeah, thank you, thank you.
So I have a couple of thoughts. And again, thank you, Mr. Rose, for incorporating that, plus my thoughts. So when I struck the provide weekly or monthly statements, I thought that was a little excessive and really just kind of silly. I think that Mr. Grayson on a monthly basis provides those monthly statements to the treasurer. You're correct in that any council member can ask for it at any time. I just think that that's a little excessive. As part of the financial report, if there were any concerns by not having a checks and balance, by not having it at least provided, whether it's requested or not, to the treasurer. I've already requested it once every month, so I know it's coming to me. But if I'm not the treasurer, I don't want it. You know, if I feared something, I guess I could ask for it, but I don't. So I do think it should be part of the policy that the outside accounting firm provided to whoever the treasurer is, just not, it doesn't need to go on a weekly, just needs to go on a monthly basis as the bill comes in. As it relates to the capital requirement, Ms. Green is absolutely right.
I'm sorry, before you move forward, so are you asking for an edit to be made that the report goes monthly to the treasurer?
Yes, it's part of the financial. report.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we clear that, okay.
Thank you. And then and monthly, not weekly or whatever it was originally. Yes, on a daily basis, I'd like to, yeah, so not weekly, just when the statement comes in, it's provided to the treasurer, who get incorporated as part of the financial report, only if there's something that stands out and she or he feels like the rest of the council would need to know. As it relates to the capital items, the state, it is correct to say that for auditing purposes, the number is 5,000, but that is not their policy. A capital item is a capital item is a capital item. If again, a rubber band, I guess could qualify because rubber bands can last longer than a year. But from a GAAP accounting standpoint, a capital item does not include office items. It includes larger purchases with zero. There's no dollar amount given. I do think that that we're not saying capital items cannot be purchased. We're saying they cannot be purchased on the P card, period. And so if there is, direction given by the board to go out and acquire a capital item of any kind that meets this definition, a purchase order can be processed, and Mr. Grayson can write the check. I was simply simply trying to avoid something in the future where just without thinking, we make a purchase for a capital item. And so to me, it's not a dollar amount so much as a prohibition against using a P card for a capital.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from you is you're not, the dollar amount doesn't matter. You just want to make sure there's no possibility of the purchase of a capital item with the utilization of a P card. So just period. And then if a capital item needs to be purchased, we have other means of getting it.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
a purchase order.
Okay,
is-
yeah,
Yeah.
perfect, okay. Mr. Watts, what are your thoughts?
That's your fault. But what's the difference? If the executive, whoever, the executive, director, can't have that discretion, just her to be able to use the P card for a capital item
Right.
versus going through a purchase order?
Right.
Is that uncommon to give this, not the whole staff, but just the.
No, I mean, I didn't ask that we reduce the spending limit for a P card. I simply asked that we avoid the purchase of capital items. Now, for example, the office furniture, that's a capital item. We use the P card for that. We did. Well,
I thought we paid it. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
First,
no,
let me
no.
start there. I thought we were invoiced and we paid the invoice.
There are, well, I think you wrote off, because when I asked you which, each one was, there was, I want to say it was for the furniture for the kids.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
That's the furniture I was referring to, not the office furniture.
I was gonna say, ooh.
What I call,
Yeah. No, you're right.
education, something, I can't remember. That would have been, to me, a more appropriate expenditure through a purchase order and not the P card. Yeah, that is, again, it isn't the dollar amount. Each one of these is reviewed, so it isn't, I'm not worried that it's, just, they're out, throwing a party. It's just, there's an appropriate way to use the P card. And I don't think capital items is really what it was intended to do. For things like travel, where you need to book several hotel rooms, you can use, that's what a P card was intended to be used for, so.
Got it. And let's say that you need to get a capital item, so you have to go through, what would that typical turnaround time be for?
Just as quick, I mean, it's
Okay,
the way that they ordered the office furniture the same way.
my last,
I was just gonna
okay.
jump in, I think
Okay.
to Mr. Mitchell's point. Depending on the amount, we have a procurement policy anyway, so if it's wanna say if it's 5,000 or if it's under 5,000, we don't have to quote, but we do. And so we'll quote it out, and then once we get that quote, we can go from there if it's considered a capital item. So this doesn't give me any
Okay.
yeah, no, I think it makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was just curious, sometimes we have an emergency, and not with state government, right? You have some folks who have a certain level on a purchasing card, P card.
Right.
And then you have some folks that have, for those emergencies, what we refer to as commodities. And so, because you don't have time to wait, depending on what the situation is, but you leave that to a person who has that discretion to be able to make that. So I was just, that if the turnaround time is fast, then you could have an emergency come up where,
Yeah.
it's a capital item, but you're prohibited now from moving on that.
Yeah, you are making sense. Here's how I would answer that. There is a provision in our policy that allows for emergency purchases. Again, it could go over the limits that are set. It is at the discretion of the chair.
Okay.
So it is, Again, this is not, we think of the person who's in the position. But it's whoever's the chair, whoever's the treasurer, whoever's the vice chair in the absence of the chair. This is meant for a policy that will sort of withstand the test of time, and the next 10 people and 10 people after them would be following these same rules. And for me, and again, I'm not a pro state over county person. I just happen to know the state rules pretty well. The county tends to look a lot like the state, but not identical. If you give me a choice, I'm going to go with the one I'm most comfortable with. It's the one I'm most knowledgeable of, and that's the state policy. So almost every position that I advocate comes from the state's policy. And the reason I lean so heavily on it is the folks at DMS and DFS that created those policies are well seasoned in procurement and HR. That's why I tend to go that way.
I'm good. Yeah.
Okay, you're comfortable, all
Yeah.
right. And you do have, just to go back to Mr. Watts' point, in the case of emergency and you need something, you don't foresee a problem.
I was sitting here trying to think what kind of, but if something were to come up,
Yeah.
if I gotta make that kind of purchase,
Yeah.
I'm gonna call you and say, hey, this is what's going on. We'll get it in writing, we'll attach it so that we have the paper trail. Yeah, but I can't think of, we don't have to buy an air conditioning unit if it goes out. We don't provide like cash assistance. So I can't think of anything, but just as sure as I say that.
Something will come up.
Yeah, but I think we're fine.
Okay, as long as there's a process to do it in an expedited way, and I'm comfortable. All right, good. Okay. So before we make any decisions, Ms. Clay, do we have any public comment?
There's no public comment.
There's no public comment. All right, so it is my understanding, Mr. Rowe, that we do have one edit that Mr. Mitchell has asked that you add to the agenda. That the reports go to the treasurer on a monthly basis. If you would please make that change. And then I am also understanding that there will be a resolution that is drafted an amended resolution that will go forward to the council at the next meeting. Is that correct?
Yes, in fact, that resolution is already prepared, but if I just might clarify,
Sure.
Councilmember Mitchell, did you say you want to do away with the reference to a dollar amount of purchase?
Yes.
Okay. So
Yeah.
the language will be changed then to eliminate. any
The
sort of
dollar amount,
reference.
correct. Yes, thank you for that. All right. Okay.
Along with, as the chair mentioned, when we strike the weekly or monthly reporting, that it just be included to the treasurer as part of the financial report.
Very good. And what I'll do is I will prepare a red line that shows these changes that I'll circulate to executive committee members tomorrow before queuing it up for the agenda. If there's any further clarification, it's needed.
I would appreciate that. Thank you very much. All right, thank you both for that.
Madam Chair,
yes, ma'am.
I need to go back to the travel policy just to bring
Absolutely.
something to you all's attention. I completely forgot. So I think I gave to you all last time the travel request authorization form.
Yes.
I have made a few changes to it just for getting rid of things that we don't use, but it is included here.
Okay.
And we can attach it as a part of the travel policy. And then if you turn the page,
I'm sorry, what changes, did y'all make any changes? To the
it's
front
nothing,
page?
nothing substantive. I just took all the fields out because we're gonna make this an Adobe form.
Okay,
And then I also just put arrows so that when the team member is filling this out, they know
You know
where
exactly where
the
to go.
totals go.
okay,
But I'm gonna try to do it so it tabulates on its own.
but no content changes?
No content
Okay.
change. And then on the back is the expense report. And so the expense report is once the travel has been done. Then all of these are filled out and it's done by day. With the explanations and of course that total. And so I did want to present these because the expense for the authorization would have any documentation, documenting any of the estimates. The expense report would be required to have all of the receipts that coincide with the expenses that are detailed. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Thank you for that. I remember it from the last meeting, but I didn't realize you made changes to it here. All right. I know we all haven't had a chance, but do y'all have any issues so far with what you see?
Take a look at it. I can make whatever changes that you might think we should make,
This was the same one
that I showed
Right.
last time.
right, okay.
I just added arrows.
Yeah, the only comment I have has nothing to do with the form. I was totally comfortable with it the last time. But if you remember in our last finance committee, yeah, they're all kind of,
Yeah.
we have a lot of meetings, it seems. But I am nervous about having the amount of money that we need to fund programs at this council, regardless of what the millage rate we set. At the last board meeting, I mentioned that we have 10 board members, now 8, but nonetheless, 10 board members who like to say yes. It's human nature. You like saying yes to programs. It's incredibly important that we remain laser focused on funding programs that are delivered to kids. And so while I think it's great that we now have a travel policy and a full purchasing policy, those are all great things. I am hopeful that we are limiting our travel to a minimum, because for every dollar that we spend, on a rental car or in a hotel, that is money that I promise you, if I took that amount of money and went down to the Bond Community Center and said, do you guys have needs? That the answer would be yes. And I know it looks like we have a lot of money in the account. We really don't, when you compare it to the needs that this community has. Many of which are 50 kids that are struggling with, right?
Yeah, no, I totally understand that, and I appreciate that, and I do think that our staff and we, really take those things into consideration, and we also need to take those things into consideration as we participate in and engage in a lot of different things. We want to be involved, but I agree, we need to keep our eyes laser focused on what we're here to do. So, but thank you for those comments, and we'll definitely keep those at the forefront. Okay. So, thank you very much for that discussion. Let's move on to agenda item number 6. So at our last meeting, we talked a little bit about funding other activities. And I know one of the major things that came up is especially with the evaluators, when the evaluators are together, and there's a full day event, how do we feed them? What type of thing? So you asked Mr. Rowe to look into the possibility of a foundation or a direct service organization where we can get some contributions for dollars to be able to fund those types of things. So I know you did a little bit of research, and I'd love to hear your thoughts and anything else you want to present.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brief.
Okay.
In the state of Florida, there are 2 approaches to local government and local governance. The first is known as home rule. And what home rule means is that a home rule government has all local government powers, all powers necessary to achieve its purposes inherent. And exercise any power it needs to meet its objectives, unless there's a state statute that says. In Florida, the home rule governments are cities, counties, and school districts. The other form of local governance is known as Dillon's rule. And Dillon's rule is the inversion of home rule. Dillon's rule says that the local government has no inherent. It has only the powers that are granted by the state legislature expressly through statute. Special districts such as CSC Leon are Dillon's rule. So anytime there's a question about whether or not CSC can exercise a particular power, such as the power to create a corporate entity and staff it, you have to find a statute that says you can do it. The first place you look is in the CSC statute, which is section 125. There's nothing there that says anything about being able to create a corporate entity. The next place you look is in 189, chapter 189, which is the general authorization for special districts. And I didn't find anything there, nor did I find anything else in several other places I looked. The Attorney General's office, part of their commission is to provide opinions to local governments that have questions about the extent and scope of their authority. On several occasions, the Attorney General's office has been asked whether or not a city or a county can create a nonprofit entity or a direct support entity to help them achieve their goals. And the Attorney General has opined that yes, because they have home rule authority, and there's no statute that says they can't do it. Not so for special districts, because again, we're not home. We've got to look at our statute 125 to see if in the very short list of powers, if we have a given power, or if it can be implied as being necessary to implement one of the express powers. I don't see that. That's not to say that other CSCs might not have done so. Perhaps acknowledging that it's a little bit gray as far as the law is concerned from their perspective. And I think that SECA may have done a survey of others and found at least one that sort of has something like this.
Yeah, so
I'm sorry, just to make sure I'm understanding,
Yes.
I think I talk of everything. So what I'm hearing from you is because we're in the Dillings, I think you're saying Dillings?
We're in the Dillon's rule.
Dillon.
That's right.
We don't have the authority to create a foundation, right? Or an organization that we could have money being funneled into for these certain things.
In order to say we do have that power, we've got to go find a state statute that says expressly you can create a nonprofit.
Okay.
And I just haven't found it.
Okay.
Nor of the listed powers available to the CSC, I don't see anything that sort of gets you there that you could say, well, in order to do that, it would be helpful if we had a nonprofit.
Okay.
The test under the law is not whether this other exercise of powers is helpful.
Okay.
Is it necessary?
Okay.
So is it necessary for us to create a nonprofit in order to, as I understand it, assist with the costs of feeding evaluators or other things?
Yeah. Okay, I understand, but the other CSCs have done it, right?
there are some older CSCs, and I say that because maybe they did it a long time ago. I do know that the Children's Board of Hillsborough does have one. It is inactive, and the ED was going to go ahead and dissolve it. Or the council was going to go ahead and dissolve it. And they did have a person who did some plan giving and wanted to give money to the CSC. And so they're in the process of being able to accept that money for that foundation. And the other one that has a foundation is Palm Beach County. Both of those are over 20 years old as far as the CSC is concerned. So when I asked them about it, they said that of course they have a separate board. They of course have to operate like a nonprofit. And that was really all that I could find on any of the CSCs that I had done.
So how do other CSCs manage the things that we're asking?
So I provided y'all with 2 documents because I did try to get at least some guidance on how they manage, if they just have other things that don't fall within the statute. And so some of them do have guidelines on refreshments and meals that kind of help govern it. One of them specifically uses the interest on the funds to fund those types of things if they need to do that. Another one.
And is that allowed? Is that allowed to use the interest?
It's all,
The
I mean,
interest is the same funds as the.
that's what they do. Same.
Okay, all right.
And then there's another one, I think in Miami. So the way they deal with council members is each of the council members contributes to whatever that yearly thing is, so that if there are refreshments or snacks or anything that the council members might want, they do it that way.
They contribute to what?
It's called the Sunshine Fund.
So it's just
It's just a fund.
okay.
Well, so so I'm very familiar with the Palm Beach County one, which is why I didn't even think, Mr. Rochi, to your point about, Dylan's role. I'm sitting here thinking to myself, wait a minute. I know they have, it isn't just a little foundation to pay for snacks. It pays for a lot. It is much like state colleges and universities who have foundations. So I'm not quite sure how they did it. And I certainly don't want to blow the whistle on them because gosh, if it's succeeding, but forget I ever mentioned it. But a sunshine fund without the proper structure, that would make me far more nervous than anything, because there has to be a management in the case of the Palm Beach County Children's Services Council, for example, and early learning coalitions. All of these, they all have, I don't want to say, many of them have foundations and where they are able to accept. So I'm not sure how Leon County or the ELC of the Big Bend, which is a special district, much like us. I don't know how they do it, but I know they do it because I donate to them.
I checked, I could be wrong, but I checked with them and I was told that they, with ELC, that they have a separate account.
Okay.
That funds go in. I was not told that it was a foundation or a nonprofit, but it was just a separate account.
So like that sunshine
Yeah,
account.
and that account is managed by their COO, I think is the person.
Okay.
And so if people donate or want to give money, they donate to that. I don't think it's, from what I was told, it's not tax deductible.
I think it is, because when as a guy who's given, I get, they send me, I don't, in finally my tax returns, I don't, they send me letters as though, and I'd have to look at the letter, as though it is, but I wouldn't bet 50 cents on, right? Because I've never looked at it to supply it to my account. So I just know that I can go, and I have on numerous occasions, all their office supplies. I go and I buy those through Amazon's wish list, but direct contributions, it says donate now kind of button, and I've donated several times. So they have a fund. It would worry me that the fund didn't have some control, whatever the control is. Yeah, and as the treasurer of that organization as well, I've never seen a documentation of how the money's spent. So I feel a little bit ignorant when it comes to ELC. But
I will just say, given everything that we have to do, I am skittish about trying to go through setting up a foundation. I mean, I've worked with foundations. I know what's required, the board, the 990s, all of those things. And I don't know if at this point we have the capacity to do that. I'm just.
I
don't know.
Yeah.
And so while we would love to be able to, if they're gonna be here all day, we'd like to be able to give them a snack or some food. We don't necessarily want to keep bothering Mr. Mitchell. He is very gracious and we appreciate that. So I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it. So I'm just okay with telling the evaluators, bring your lunch. Because I don't want this to turn into something where people think we're, and I don't mean these people. I know you all know. I just mean our public. I want them to, know that we are not being less than judicious.
I just heard our general counsel say that we shouldn't do it. And that's enough for me, that's enough for me, because I don't know anything about Dylan or his role, I mean, I really don't. I don't, but the fact that you sat here and said, I don't advise that we do this because we don't have the right to do it. I think that if we found another way to do it, and even if it's setting up an account that we can ask for contributions of, if people want to, that they can, and it is what it is, and if it's,
So let me give, man,
please,
let me
go
give you an example of what we just had happen. So of course, using the space free of charge.
Yeah.
But we do require $100 deposit, just in case you break something, you're responsible. We had a group in here that they did what they had to do. When we went to go give them the money back, they said, no, we don't want it back, keep it.
Okay.
So, and we've had this happen one other time because we were participating in the Village Square. And when we were doing that Village Square for the last year, well, they want to donate $250. I'm like, okay, well, hold on, because I don't know, how. But that's $350.
Yeah.
We could feed the evaluators with it. It's not. So I don't know if we could take that in and put a line item, make a line that shows that as other revenue. And then if we had to feed her just by snacks, it could come out of that. And one last thing, and then I'm gonna be quiet. So I did talk with St. Lucie because they will have people that will just give them money. They acknowledge it. It's not tax deductible, and they put it in a line item. And that's just what they use if they need to do something outside of what the statute says we can do with the money. So I just wanted to be fully transparent because we literally have $350 we're just sitting on, because I'm not really sure
what to do with it.
Yeah, and I want to be sure that we recognize it as income, because it is.
Yeah.
And that maybe we can use that
Yes,
and I think there could be situations, and all this came up after I met with you, where maybe somebody would say, just keep it.
Yeah.
Just keep it. And so maybe that's what.
So here's my thoughts on this. I was not committed to a DSO nor a foundation. I'm not even looking for a tax deduction, right?
Okay.
I am looking for an accounting of revenues that the council takes in.
Okay.
When Jacinta calls and says, text me, on a Friday before the Monday evaluation, say, hey, we got all these people coming next week, we got nothing to feed them. Of course, I'm gonna gladly, buy lunch for them. I would like a method where Jacinta, not that I don't enjoy your text messages, but just text me, hey, how you doing?
Right.
Not, hey, we got all these people coming, right?
Right.
There's an account, and if that's how the ELC does it, I don't care.
Yeah.
There just needs to be checks and balances in an account, again, having nothing to do with who's here now, but who will be here in the future. And where somebody, if a board member wants to, write a check to that account, understanding that the purpose of that money is for all these things that fall outside of our authorities. Then the giver knows why they're giving and has approved it.
So as treasurer, do you not have any issues with that? Because I would love to have a separate account for things like that, right? And then
Well, that's my concern.
Every ELC has this. I mean, and again, they are set up identically to the Children's Services Council. Same part of the statute, the same concept. I don't know how they work it. I don't care what it's called.
Okay.
I don't want it to be a petty cash drawer though, where there's no accountability. That's gonna put everybody.
I know, in trouble. Mr. Watts, you had a question, then we'll come to Mr. Rowe. What, you looked concerned.
Well, I was gonna say the Dillon law, it doesn't say that. I just want to make sure I'm clear. It's not saying that it can't. It's just that you haven't found anything that addresses saying that you can't. Is that how I understand you?
Yeah, in order to determine whether you can do a particular thing or take an action.
Right.
You've got to be able to look to a statute and find the text that says, yes, you can do that. Or you could imply from what you are granted the power to do that I can do this thing over here because it's there. For instance, you have the power to lease office space and to equip office space. That implies the power to provide soap and napkins in the bathroom. It doesn't say it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily empower you to put a jacuzzi or shower system in the bathrooms, right? So it really has to be what's expressly laid out in the statute. I've looked at many special district acts where the enumeration of powers includes a line item that says to accept and receive donations and grants. We don't have that. The only place that donations appears in the CSC statute is in the instance where instead of a county creating a CSC like ours, which is an independent special district with taxing power, i.e. its own revenue source, the county instead creates a dependent special district, which doesn't have any taxing power and is therefore reliant on donations in order to have operating funds. That's the only thing I see in the CSC statute allowing you to take donations. And that's, $200,000 to help offset the cost of annual, or $20 because I'd like to contribute to the cause. I don't think you have the power to accept donations.
Okay. Do we have the right to open up a separate account for monies that aren't, coming from the taxes that we can use from people who don't pay, who don't want their money back or things like that, or that we can contribute to? Is there anything that prohibits us from doing that?
From simply having the account?
Yes, and using those dollars.
What would the money be used for?
Okay, that's a good question. So it will be for activities that are not directly related or directly funding programs specific for children's services. So for example, eating evaluators, or if we're having another open house event and we want to have cupcakes. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm just thinking, but that's what I would think those funds would come from.
It sounds similar to the so-called sunshine fund.
Right.
As you could find an example. The easiest, best way to do it would be not to commingle those funds with CSC funds.
Correct.
But instead to have a board member say, you know what, I think I'll pick up the tab. I in my personal capacity.
Okay, and not have a separate account is what I'm hearing.
Which is how
We've been doing it.
Now, one thing to bear in mind is that if you exceed the scope of your authority, right, you do something that you don't have express authority.
Right.
What's the punishment, right? It's not a criminal offense. What could happen is somebody who was interested might sue you over it, say you don't have the power to do that. So then they haul you into court, they spend a lot of money on legal fees, we spend legal fees defending it. And at the end, the judge says, you know what, you don't have the power to do it, stop doing it.
Okay.
And by the way, we don't have to go to court.
Yeah.
We can just say, by you raising the point, we get it.
Yeah.
We'll unwind it to avoid legal fees. It seems to me that, again, from an ease and a process, again, the Hillsborough County, let's say that in my plan giving, I do want to leave money to the CSC. Evidently, Hillsborough's got somebody down there. Some Mac Daddy's got leaving a little bit of jack to somebody, or Mac Mama. I don't know which it is, but somebody's leaving some money. And it's for purposes like this that fall outside of the scope of our authority to fund, and I guess, I mean, we can just do it on a case-by-case basis, and Jacinta can set that up. But I mean, again, as the recipient of these text messages, and this is not me complaining, this is me saying, I don't think about this as their current council. I think about it always as the next council or the council after that. What if there isn't, a council member that Jacinta can call, and at some point, Jacinta will still be here and I'll be 6 feet under, So it's, she's got, and she doesn't just like send out a thing to one particular council member. It's not a practical way
So-
of doing it.
May I ask a question? So could somebody create a foundation and decide that the purpose of that foundation is solely for the purpose of supporting the CSC?
Yes, but I don't think the CSC is in a position to just accept that donative service.
So,
Because we don't have the
Gotcha.
power to accept donations.
okay.
Even if.
I was thinking maybe that's how they did it.
No, each CSC is established by ordinance of the county that created it. And Leon County has an ordinance that created CSC subject to voter approval. The recitation of powers laid out in the Leon County ordinance tracks the statute.
Yeah.
It doesn't add anything extra. It occurs to me that perhaps Hillsborough or Palm Beach, some of the larger, might have said, oh yeah, you've got everything in the statute, plus we're going to give you some more powers.
Okay.
So maybe they've got something in their ordinance that they
That allows
kind of can rely on as a source of.
I think Broward also has something. I mean, they do. I get it. It's big money down there, right? We're just little Leon County, but
Yeah, I talked to Cindy, Amber Seltzer, she said they don't have. She's open for hours.
yeah, I don't mean, again, I just use the term foundation and direct support organization in terms of setting something up. It doesn't have to be, as the statute defines a DSO. I just meant an organization, an entity that supports activities of the Children's Services Council of Leon County that fall outside of what the voters intended with their direct tax dollars. Again, Paul Mitchell can do whatever Paul Mitchell wants, right? I can at Jacinta's beck and call, I am. But let's just say I'm on some world tour and I don't get your text. You know, I know. Look at that.
And I'm gonna be clear that this is not something that's happening.
I get it.
It seems like a lot now because we've got, so these 3 procurements, we got a day of presentations where they all have to be there. But we do have this little bit of money. And so I would imagine if they wrote the check to us and said, don't
But I don't,
spend it.
can we?
So you're
spend that?
saying we can't
No.
deposit it?
Wow, okay, let's recognize Dr. Watts and then we'll go. Yes,
I have a suggestion. Well, thank you, because I didn't draw and all of that. This is it's going to continue to happen. I think if there's an opportunity to find out if it's appropriate what the ELC is doing, and find out if there are other CSCs and bring that back. I think it is going to be really valuable if it can happen or it's happening, even though it might be a heavy lift. I remember like a year ago, let me just give you an example. I remember like a year ago, this is in a rural area and a woman had passed away and she left her money to an organization to strictly be used. She had it in her will and everything to be used to go towards the youth that the organization serves. So I think if you have the ability to make it find a way, I think it'll go a long way. Sunshine funds, when I stepped into my last role, we had one, I stopped it because it was literally it was like a Jacinta holding the cash, holding the cash. And so, and then if somebody, the same 3 people giving each month, the $10 to the Sunshine Fund, X, Y, and Z, it was just a hassle, X, Y, and Z. But I think if there's a way to have that platform for people to donate, if it can happen, I think it'll.
so you're at
So I'll-
the Foundation.
Yeah.
I'll dive a
Hey,
little
fun.
deeper.
Fun.
I will tell you, my other reservation is, and I think I shared this with Mr. Mitchell. I do not think it would be in the council's best interest to solicit money. So when we got these organizations that are starving, for funds, so if we were to do that, in my opinion, it literally would sit there unless somebody came to us. I would not feel comfortable soliciting for donations.
We don't think we should
into-
solicit
Yeah,
or
I feel-
anything, yeah. But if somebody has the money and they want to give, then this will be this is an avenue for them to do it. But I agree, we should never ask.
Well, so
Go so far as
Imagine
trying
my
to
tent.
to another
my
nonprofit.
so yeah,
But anyway,
and
that's just-
that's the route we go, but I just think of these community conversations we have where, you know, I saw the P card, income to pizzas, income
Yeah.
to, like, there's that is the growing pains, we should have a different way by which we fund those. And I think that I don't raise an eyebrow as to whether or not it's a legitimate use of somebody's funds. It's just not, if you read what the voters voted on, it didn't say anything like that. And it's, or when we had the meeting over in Frenchtown at the Renaissance Center, so it's called, and there was food there, right, for vendors. Like, why don't we serve, right? But those are decisions that are made, and it's more often than not because the meeting coincides with when people get hungry, dinner time, which is when we can attract a larger crowd. And that is the idea, is to attract as many participants from the public as we possibly can. I just think that we just keep working at it. We'll find to Mr. Watts's point, it's worth continuing to research, continue to find an avenue. In the meantime, Ms. Clay, you just keep texting me and I'll do my very best to
How about we send aid to everyone? I don't think we should, and Mr. Mitchell has been more than gracious, but we just send it out, those who can. I will tell you, I did want to tell you that there is, and that's what I gave you, so there are some CSCs that have created policies, not policies, guidance.
Yeah.
And so if a meeting, like in the instance where we're gonna have evaluators here from 8 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock at night, they have guidance and
Yeah.
numbers and all of that. So just something to think about.
Yeah.
I just always feel bad when I'm asking someone to do this work and I can't at least
Yeah.
give them.
No, I completely agree.
So that's
just creating a policy, the CSC creating a policy that doesn't make it right. I mean, that's kind of like us saying we're creating a policy and starting a foundation. To Mr. Rowe's point, we fall outside of that authority. The same thing is, I would like to find a mechanism by which you don't have to worry. And the council is not creating a policy by which this is the taxpayers' dollars that that come through their property taxes, because I am a taxpayer, but that those are used for those purposes. I'm not saying that the others don't do it, but.
So this is what I'm proposing. Thank you for that. I'm sorry, ask y'all to go back again, and let's readdress this again next month. And if we can look at, especially ELC, like what is it that they're doing? How are they able to make this work? What can we do? Even if the answer is no again, we want another look, please, one more time, and see what we can do to find ways to bring dollars in.
Does it have, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Does it have to be next month? Can they have longer than that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is,
Yeah, if you don't find
to me,
anything.
this is we have a lot. I was really hoping
Yeah.
that as we move into when the next meeting is gonna be, maybe it cannot be
Then that's
in
fine.
June,
Yeah.
if we don't have any real business, just to give us a little bit of breathing.
Do some work, right? So just the next time we can do, whenever y'all are ready, we want to readdress this again, is what the request is. And then I do have a special request for Ms. Clay. So honestly, I didn't know y'all were hitting up Mr. Mitchell for every single meal, or activity. I really did not know. But I do think that when there are requests, the request should be broad. You just never know. And if he's the only one, then he's the only one, that responds. But if everybody does, I think.
For the record, I don't want to paint a very different
Sure.
picture than what is reality. I went to Ms. Clay and said, I do not want the council even getting close to the line. From this point forward, nothing, you come to me, I will do it.
Okay.
So it isn't,
You opened the door. I get it.
You live with cash here. Yeah, mama needs a new pair of
Fair
shoes.
enough.
Yeah.
Okay, appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thanks for the clarification.
Gotcha.
But I would like for that request to go out to everybody, just, that makes us aware of the need too. We're not always aware of what the need is. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so very much. And then whatever you all have for the next meeting, great. And if you need more time, just defer it. We don't have enough information yet for this. Okay. All right. Great discussion. Thank you all so very much. Let's go to agenda item number 7, our next meeting date. So it's my understanding that Monday evenings aren't going to work for all of our executive committee members. So we need to find another date and time. Ms. Clay, do you have any other options for us to consider, or do you want us to just leave it open? I know we do the first Mondays.
Well, we've
Not
also
Thursday.
changed, we've
Not
also
Thursday.
changed the other committee meetings.
Yeah,
To Tuesday.
right.
Why don't you do this?
So first
Why don't
Thursday
you-
is our programming.
First and
Third
third
Thursday
Thursday.
is programming. Third Thursday is council meeting. Second Monday is budget and finance.
And what we did was we've married the budget and finance and the executive council meetings on the same day. Are y'all opposed to continuing doing that until the 12 weeks have passed?
Say this again. So we would be.
We would do the budget and finance at 4:30 and then the executive committee meeting at 5:30
5:30.
on the same day. You can't do that? You
You
can't,
can't do
okay.
Mondays at all.
Monday or Tuesday. I'm so
Oh, you
sorry.
can't do Tuesday
No,
either,
so-
we changed it. Okay.
So, yes,
All right.
it's just,
Okay, that's fine.
sorry, it's just like, so Wednesdays.
That's my problem day. That,
Okay, then.
as long as I'm out before 7, I could do,
Right. So Thursday, as long as we don't do the same Thursday that the program committee is meeting.
It would have
Or you do like
second Thursday or fourth Thursday or Thursdays that's available.
That's fine.
so we
Does
can
that
do
work?
Thursday. We can do Thursday opposite the council meeting. So, so if the
Okay.
council meeting's the third
But before.
Thursday,
But ideally, soon
Second
before as
Thursday.
opposed to a
Right.
month before, because
Yeah,
So
so
we can
second
do
Thursday is the
Thursday.
week before.
good, that works.
So ideally, like your meeting today, it would be, instead of, today is,
The eighth.
what's the day, Monday?
Today's
Does that give us-
Instead of Monday, it would be,
does
Hold
that
on,
give us
I need
enough notice
to
time?
interrupt. Because Thursday, the second Thursday, we are trying to get things together so we can get the packets posted and done for the following Thursday. So since we're having this discussion, may I take a point of
Please.
privilege?
Absolutely.
We literally are preparing for meetings every week of the month. And so what I am hoping is that as we get into the next program year, that we look at a way to not have so many meetings. I mean, literally. So the last week in the month, we're preparing for executive and programming. The first week of the month, we're preparing for budget and finance
And program.
and program. The next week, we're preparing for council meeting.
Okay.
And so I'm hoping that as we get into the swing of things, now there are some councils that have their committee meetings one month and then their council meetings the next month. There are some councils that only do committee meetings every other month. This is not a decision for today. This is just throwing out to think.
Okay.
Because right now, as I keep this board, I'm not sure what would be on the next executive committee meeting, if we don't need to bring the food back immediately.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
I can kind of see a day where the executive committee is only meeting on a quarterly basis.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the only, and candidly, the program committee,
We'll get to a point.
Yeah, we're sort of at this point,
Yeah, I know.
you know?
The schedule that we just created last week, will that not work for Mr. Watt's schedule? Because we moved everything to Tuesday, right? And double deckered the calls? Did we do that?
For budget and finance.
Right, and then we have him on the
What did we
executive.
move? We moved budget and finance next month to what?
We kept it, I think it's kept on that Monday,
But it's
but
already,
right, instead of because it was moved to that same Monday, and so one right after another, instead of the previous Monday that it normally.
which still doesn't work.
That's
still
what
on
works for
Monday
Mr.
of
Watts,
March.
right?
Are these times on Monday, anybody open to them? I think earlier.
Totally.
Okay.
I
Not do that.
No, right now. Yeah, too early, I'm sorry.
So let's do this. Thursday sounded like it worked. The only thing is that maybe we need to, for the executive committee, we do it a month before. And so we might actually get to miss 1 month. Well, Madam Chair, is there anything that you are about to do an agenda for next executive committee?
No, I have nothing. honestly.
Hearing nothing, I would just move that we
Readjusted it.
skip the next executive committee, and the following executive committee can,
Be on a Thursday
yes,
opposite the.
a
council
few
meeting.
weeks
Yeah.
ahead.
Thursday in July.
I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about, but you know,
It's the 13th.
that you're looking at the calendar. So as long, and you know that for Mr. Watts's schedule, Thursday is the best.
Yep.
Okay. So we have a
We
plan.
do have a plan, and if necessary, I can do Wednesdays as long as. We convene by 5, because I need to be out by 7. So that's my request. And some of our meetings go long, I'm just saying, so.
Well, but then I do want to come back to the idea of quarterly.
Okay,
I just want you guys to think about that for executive. And see, I mean, we had a lot we needed to do, but as we're getting into all this funding,
yeah,
I don't know that there's
because they're.
a lot that has to be done. So
There's
Yeah.
really, I mean,
We don't-
honestly, the only thing that the council meetings need to happen.
yeah.
If you look, most of everything is a consent agenda.
Yeah.
Well, the finance report is,
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm completely comfortable
So
with
let's
that.
do this. We can go back, we can skip next month for
Yeah.
sure.
Okay,
We can go back, let's look at how we can set up quarterly.
okay,
And just for executive, budget and finance, we need to keep monthly.
Yeah, okay.
Which, yeah,
right.
just so, and then programming eventually is gonna probably move into that space as well. But that is another discussion I'd like to have regarding programming.
well, you've got all of, I mean, that committee has to be reformed anyway. Based on the numbers I saw at the,
I wanna have another discussion
Okay.
about, I'd like to talk with you first.
Absolutely.
And then we can bring
so
it back.
for purposes though of this, we are not setting a next meeting.
Exactly.
Because we're gonna pause, because we may get to a quarterly, we may not see each other again.
Well, we will.
As
It's not
as
a
a group
committee, right?
for, another 2
I know love
3
months.
months, which will get, we'll get you plenty of time to come up with a committee. We will be having, by the way, here's your opportunity and invitation. We will be having a lot of evaluators and training for,
Right.
so, and maybe, by the way, like people who have, I've encouraged to respond, they're like, it looks far more intimidating than it actually is, because it makes it look like you have to come in an entire week.
Yeah.
When in fact you don't. It's, like 2 days for one particular ITN, a day for another. So, but as you break this down to how many actual, mouths we'll need to feed, come up with something and everybody can say, I'll take Monday and Tuesday, I'll take Wednesday, whatever. We'll figure it
Okay,
out.
we will figure it out. Okay, so as of right now, we're not setting a meeting date. You all will go back and look at it, right, and then
Yeah.
Yes.
recirculate that information back
Yes.
to us. Okay, thank you very much. Does that work for you, Mr. Long?
Yes.
That works for you, Mr. Mitchell?
I have no idea.
That works, okay. As of right now, we do not have another meeting agenda item, other than the fact that you all will go back and revisit and come back to us when we're ready. We're now at the point where we're ready for any member comments. Any comments from either of you, Mr. Watts?
No.
Mr. Mitchell?
I only have one. Ms. Clay, could you figure out what it is that the council members, I've noticed that a couple council members went for at least the whole council, and some of the committees like to tack on certain things. Can we find out what that list is? Because maybe a trip to Costco is in order.
No, we want some more of those little charcuterie boards from Carmen.
I was forward you herself.
That was awesome. I know.
I do so on a regular basis.
Really? Oh, that was awesome. Okay, I'm sorry. I just wanted to mention that.
Okay, if you just kind of give me what everybody's go-to favorites.
Perfect. Okay, any other comments? You're good, Mr. Watson? It is 6:27 PM. Our meeting is now adjourned. Thank you all very much
Thank you.
for your time and commitment. to
Are we on?
It didn't so.
We couldn't get on.
That's not what I'm looking
No, don't want to let us out.
It doesn't.
Uh-oh.